internacionalització. Un equip d'experts et respondrà de forma ràpida i personalitzada. Aprofita la xarxa d'oficines exteriors i els serveis d'acció per apropar-te a les oportunitats i fer créixer el teu negoci a escala internacional. Acció. Fem avui l'empresa del demà.
Bon dia i benvinguts a aquests esmorzars de finançament que organitza l'àrea de startups d'acció. Bé, en primer lloc, abans de passar a la jornada d'avui, bàsicament dir-vos que ahir vam tancar la línia de coinversió amb business, àngels i fons de capital risc, per tant, té bastanta relació amb el que parlarem avui. També estem començant ja a preparar la participació d'acció dins de l'Acció Startup Forum dins del Tech Spirit Barcelona, que es durà a terme entre el 12 i el 13 de desembre. Allà hi muntarem unes reunions amb inversors. Avui, a data d'avui, i encara falta temps per l'esdeveniment, tenim vora 70 inversors confirmats. L'any passat també vam tenir vora 90, per tant, estem treballant, i vosaltres, startups, podreu tenir reunions amb aquells inversors que acceptin la vostra sol·licitud de reunió durant aquests 2 dies que durarà el Tech Spirit. I també sapigueu que estem començant a veure'ns amb les startups que es van presentar per la Catalan Pitch Competition, on escollirem la startup catalana de l'any. I bé, bàsicament, també he de recordar-vos que el Business Angel aporta finançament, d'acord, però també aporta uns coneixements, un saber fer, uns contactes dins de la indústria, saber escalar companyies, saber fitxar, també a vegades fa una espatlla amb la qual recolzar-se o un confident a l'hora de parlar, doncs sapigueu que tenim una part d'aquest coneixement, també el tenim en forma de mentors, d'acord? I per tant, podeu sol·licitar a les startups que estigueu al directori de startups d'acció, que l'adreça és startupshub.catalonia.com, doncs les que estigueu allà podeu sol·licitar un mentor abans de que finalitzi l'any. I bé, bàsicament, l'esmorzar d'avui l'hem escollit per 2 raons. La primera és perquè els Business Angels són la pedra angular, el pilar, o un dels pilars, evidentment, de l'ecosistema de startups, i podríem dir que és un dels pilars dels inversors. Per què? Perquè està en una fase en la que el risc que ells assumeixen només es pot assimilar o assemblar-se al risc que assumeixen els fundadors de les companyies. D'acord? I una vegada entren els business angels, preparen l'empresa, va madurant, va superant etapes de risc, doncs després entraran els fons de capital risc. Però sense els àngels, en molts casos, no hi hauria continuïtat ni una preparació de la companyia. I després la següent raó és per què? Doncs perquè fa uns dies, si no recordo malament, el 10 i l'11 d'octubre, es va celebrar a Brussel·les la European Angel Investment Summit. I aleshores, bé, aquí el nostre convidat d'avui ens explicarà algunes coses de les que es van discutir, d'altres, escolta, els convidem a anar-hi a la propera edició de l'any vinent. El nostre convidat d'avui és el Jacopo Losso. Ell és director general de la European Business Angel Association i ell és llicenciat en Administració i Direcció d'Empreses per la Universitat Bocconi de Milà, i també va fer un intercanvi a la IPADE Business School. Doncs, Jacopo, aquest esmorzar serà en anglès, d'acord? Per tant, so Jacopo, thank you for being here. I will ask you the first question, which is going to be what has been discussed in Brussels.
Well, thank you, Oriol and Axio, for inviting me here to this breakfast event. In Brussels, we've been celebrating since 5 years our annual European Angel Investment Summit, which is a large conference we organize every year together with the European Commission. So we work with 2 different DGs of the EU Commission to host this event for the purpose of raising awareness about the fundamental role that business angels play in the innovation ecosystem. As you already correctly summarized in your introduction, angels are the #1 source of finance for early stage startups, but they are also investors that are difficult for the public administration and the governmental stakeholders to fully appreciate and also work with. So a big purpose of this conference is exactly this: to make the world of policymakers in Brussels understand who are the angel investors, how they add value to the startup ecosystem, and how governments can support and foster the development of angel communities. So this is why the event is organized every year. We organize it with over 500 participants coming from all over Europe. And the second big reason we host this event is really for the networking. EBAN believes in building cross-border connections between startup ecosystems and, of course, also between investor communities. This is crucial. Connections are crucial for the success of portfolio companies. Without connections and without access to key people that the startup can work with, growth will take inevitably much longer and be more difficult to achieve. This is why a big part of our conference is about networking, is about building connections with other investors in other communities to work with, to co-invest with, but also to learn from each other from. Secondly, to build connections with go-to-market partners that can help companies access markets beyond their home region, beyond their hometown. And this is also something that the conference does. It brings together people. It gives enough of an environment, of an experience in the program to connect with one another. And this is in a nutshell why we host it. Every year, the themes that are presented at our conferences change and vary. This year, we actually talked a lot about the importance of people in startups. As you all know, investing in pre-seed and seed stage companies is very much investing in the entrepreneurs. And so a lot of our agenda this year really focused on finding the right entrepreneurs to work with, how to select them, how to remove your own biases as an investor and the shortcuts we investors have when we judge teams and when we want to make quick assessments. So we talked also a lot about the importance of diversity and the gender balance within teams. We had also some interesting statistics that actually show that diversity is a benefit for the growth of companies, and the startups that have mixed teams, women and male led teams, tend to outperform and do much better than gender only teams, be they all men or all women led companies. And so we talked a lot about that aspect and many other more in the program.
Well, maybe we can dig deeper during our conversation.
Of course.
Okay. Well, some of the topics that you mentioned, maybe we can dig deeper, as we've said. For example, you were talking about quality connections for startups. Okay, so what were the insights on how build and nurture those quality connections?
So for startups in a very young moment, the capital they are seeking is only a part of the solution. A big part of growing your business is in these stages of your company's life, either getting good product market fit and validation of that, or if you already have a minimum viable product, it's to find a good sales partner to scale up really your revenues and your sales. So a lot of the benefits of having connections are accessing these kind of growth opportunities. For startup founders, building connections is not the easiest thing in the world. The founders are focused on building their company. That is where all of their energy is going. That is where they are putting their emphasis, and that is where they should be focusing. But as a business angel, you know that you can add value to your investee companies by introducing them, for example, to transformational business clients, people, organizations your startup can do business with, and on one hand, legitimize what they are doing. On the other hand, also increase the kind of volumes of activity they are doing. And these kinds of connections are something that angels can either bring from their past, and that is how it works many times. As an angel, you have wealth of network you've already built up over the years, But not only, you can also make future connections that help your portfolio companies access new people that you know. And you as an angel, you have this kind of responsibility to be there for your startup, to help it when it needs to be supported. And of course, you can help it with your investment, you can help it with your mentoring, but what can be a true game changer for your portfolio companies is the people you know, the connections you can make. And this is just one example. I think all the time about the portfolio companies of business angels, and they are constantly fundraising and seeking more capital to grow. And again, you as an angel can make a difference. Mm-hmm. And by very simply introducing that company, perhaps to VCs, you know, perhaps to later stage investors in your network, in your own connections, that can look at that company and that can make an investment after you've invested. And so these are just two simple examples to show why investing as a business angel, investing in your network is one of the best investments you can make, because these connections can then benefit not just one of your investments, but all your portfolio companies for the present and of course also for the future.
Wow, very, very interesting. And you've mentioned another topic that you guys were discussing about diversity, okay? And well, you said, I think, okay, it's not as good as being all male as being all women, okay? The diversity increases what you get from a team, okay? So what were your views, the angels' views on this issue, how to build startups more diverse at the early stage phase? How you approach this?
Naturally, there is an issue in the startup world, and I'm sure that also Axio knows that female-led companies are underrepresented in this community. And this is something that the startup ecosystem as a whole, including all of the stakeholders, from the universities down to the investors, can act and do something about it. And that is when, you know, that is a reason why our association, EBAN, last year, again at the annual European Angel Investment Summit in Brussels, started a manifesto to incorporate gender lens as an investment criteria when you as a business angel are evaluating teams. So gender diversity to be put as a positive and as a valuable aspect of an angel's or of an investor's screening process when they're evaluating companies to invest in. The statistics show it. There's multiple studies carried out across the world that demonstrate the benefits of diversity. And this is including not just racial and cultural diversity, but also gender. Therefore, we had a couple of interventions in the program. We've had investors that have adopted gender lens investment thesis already since about a decade now, and have statistics on their investments to show for it, and I can assure you the returns of investing in gender diverse teams, and also in this practical case, outperform non-gender diverse startups. And the other interventions we had are very much about building more of an entrepreneurial, diverse entrepreneurial ecosystem, and this is something that we've started to work on together with the United Nations Women Initiative. So again, at our summit in Brussels, we also took the occasion to initiate new collaborations and partnerships, and with the UN Women, we are proudly working together to bring more girls and more young women to become entrepreneurs as a career path. And we believe that when there will be also more entrepreneurs in female entrepreneurs, there will also be more female investors as a result, because as many of you know, angels are in many cases exited entrepreneurs that are reinvesting now in the next generation of founders. So the importance of gender lens, we stress it. As an angel, as a male angel, you have a lot of biases when you're looking at teams. Obviously, you tend to pick what looks, I would say, familiar to you, what looks something that you can recognize, and characteristics that you like to see in founders. These are all biases that may get the best of you as an investor, and you will regret it when you're looking at your companies and your portfolio. So we talked a lot about this aspect in Brussels, and we believe that progress is possible. Over the years, the statistics around female participation in the startup world have increased, albeit not much, but they have improved. We are hoping to bring as much as possible a balance in the ecosystem, and with our manifesto, we've committed to raising the participation of women in the business angel community from 10%, which is the number they are nowadays across Europe, to triple that to 30% by 2030. And we're confident that as an ecosystem, acknowledging the benefits of diversity, also in our angel syndication, we can get there.
Well, it's a nice figure. It's a really big challenge. Recordeu que podeu fer preguntes a través del chat, d'acord? Well, another question, you guys were talking about all of this in Brussels, okay? Which is like, well, some of the most, cutting edge regulations or regulations that affects us all take place. So what would be the role of European regulation, maybe in other cases state regulation, but what you guys were talking about regulation in the Congress? It's also a very important thing for business angels.
So regulations affect us as investors as they affect our portfolio companies, as the startups we invest in. And of course, the latest regulation we've discussed in Brussels was the AI, the Artificial Intelligence Act, which is an act that is, I would say, groundbreaking on many fronts, because it finally opens up a debate on what is ethical and what is sustainable in the artificial intelligence realm. And as we all know, artificial intelligence can be a double-edged sword, meaning it can be on one hand a great tool that makes our lives easier. On the other hand, it can be a huge threat to society as us Europeans see and value our society. And I believe that the interventions that we heard from in Brussels, which were from two experts, one somebody from the Commission that is working on the AI Act, so point of view from the public world, and then a speaker from the private market who's an entrepreneur and an investor in the AI space. And I think what was interesting to conclude is that it's impossible to regulate constantly changing technology, and it's impossible to prevent all sorts of things that can happen with its misuse. But what was interesting was that for I think the first time, I think this is one of the first governments in the world that introduces a regulation on AI, on artificial intelligence. I think for the first time you see that there is a law that is much more based on the underlying values of our European society, as opposed to technicalities or to other kind of parameters that policymakers look at. And the whole goal of the AI Act is to actually bring a balance between maintaining a good society, at the same time promoting innovation and promoting digital transition of many parts of how we live and how we work as people. So this is a law that is a first iteration. We should expect more changes to come as the years develop. But it's interesting to point out that there are several areas that the Commission and the EU government have identified as extremely high risk and very high risk areas, where as a startup entrepreneur, you better be careful about what you're doing and how you're using people's data and how you're using your algorithms to come up with decisions and proposals and products. And I would say for an angel investor, this means that before you invest, if you are not an AI expert yourself, it's good to have one on hand. Again, the importance of having good connections, but it's good to have somebody to consult on hand because there are several areas which can appear to be gray areas in how a startup provides value to its clients that may fall in a questionable area, let's put it this way, of how the AI regulations are built. So for us investors, we better be very cautious, nevertheless invest in AI, but be cautious and do our good due diligence so that we're not backing startups that are using data or using AI for unethical or questionable kind of purposes.
Mm-hmm. But very interesting. We still have 30 minutes to discuss all the things that have been going on. And another thing is that those European Angel Investment Summits, they have some kind of sector focus. And while we were talking before, about the space tech group that you guys have, I would also like to stress that this October 22 and 23, there's going to be like the new Space Congress here in Barcelona in November, 22, 23 of November. So you are invited, Jacopo. Check. And other sectors in what's going on with some sectors that you guys have quite a nice group of well-connected and experienced people in those events.
Well, we are, as EBAN, huge believers in the space tech industry. We've been actively building up our space tech community of investors for about 10 or so years now. Space is a very interesting area and industry to be investing in. And the reason is for basically the past 70, 80 years or so, space has been exclusively an area, an industry dominated by the public sector. So space has always been seen by our society as a national defense kind of topic, as a military related topic. But that has started to change now. Of course, as we all know, innovation is in this world we live in, emerges from the private sector, emerges from the entrepreneurs, and that is very much also the case for the space industry. Big players, big public players, are now investors in innovation. They are not any longer so much the drivers and the producers of new innovation. And well, that means a huge opportunity for both the entrepreneurs and the investors. And of course, space is not to be intended in a unidimensional way. The first time I was introduced to this sector, the only thing I had in my mind was, maybe we were going to be investing in a rocket ship or maybe a new kind of a spacesuit, and it's actually not at all that. There are many different technologies, and I take one of the most commonly common ones that we come across, which is big data, and the Earth observation from space allows to build big data models and to crunch millions of data sets and numbers to produce insights, and that is again a space tech kind of investment that looks very much similar to actually investing in the more kind of typical sectors that angels here on planet Earth are investing. The other interesting aspect of space is that it's not only made up of technologies that are much more accessible than we believe, it's also very much a sector where there is still a lot of room for the private startups to compete. Let's call it a blue ocean still. There are lots of opportunities for entrepreneurs to build viable businesses and then to exit those kinds of ventures to both the public world, but also a growing and increasingly strong private sector, leading really the developments and the innovation in space. Everyone, of course, can relate to SpaceX, but there are dozens of other similar companies, maybe less famous, maybe less large in size and employee count, but nevertheless huge players in this industry. And what we talk about at our events when it comes to space is that this is one of the best opportunities that angels have to make an investment. And of course, we've been saying this already for some years, but it is a sector that's increasingly maturing. And as you pointed out, also in Barcelona, the space sector is starting to get people excited, which is also a big reason why you're hosting a conference. See, this was not possible maybe a few years ago, and now it is. And we strongly believe that as angel investors, this is definitely an industry you want to be a part of.
Yeah, and you know, it it seemed that maybe, you know, space needed lots of money, and you know, as angels, you could get trapped in a company that would need lots of money. Maybe the company wouldn't find that money, or if it finds the money, you would be like with a tiny share of the company, which is also sometimes a problem.
It's a misconception because again, there are certain space technologies that are not something for angels to be investing in unless you are an angel with really deep pockets and a lot of patience. However, there are a lot of other applications that are much more accessible. And the public, so the European Space Agency, for example, NASA, these are players that back innovation at an early stage when the angels invest, meaning regardless of the capital you have within your own network of investors, you can always count on finding in the public sector a strong counterpart and an investor in such technologies. As I was saying before, a lot of innovation in the space world comes from the private market, and the public sector, acknowledging this, has already ramped up a lot its resources to be able to purchase or to do collaborations with startups. So it opens up opportunities for investors. But yes, there are still some misconceptions that investing in space is something very far away and difficult to
like
get
biotechnology. You know that we have seen some angels investing now in biotechnology companies, which is like changing the what it was, you know, supposed to happen.
Absolutely.
In the past.
Absolutely, yeah.
And besides new space, is there any sector that you focus?
Well, we talked about we didn't talk about a sector in particular, but we did talk a lot about the Africa opportunity.
Okay, which is important also for us as Europeans.
Of course, and that was put in relation to impact investment and to green transition investing. And as you all know, Africa is a market that allows for huge opportunities for startups that are solving major societal and economic challenges. And including this, you also have a huge opportunity to invest and to build businesses and to grow and scale businesses in the energy space in Africa. So we talked a lot about how to get into this market as a European investor, and there isn't really a one simple answer to this, but a part of the solution is working with people you can trust and building the connections with investors that have presence on the ground in the African market, and that can be your eyes and your ears and your trusted co-investors for anyone not investing from there, so from remote. And a big way to access really the African market is to start doing this through groups, through angel groups that are specialized in searching for deal flow, in evaluating companies, and then in investing and supporting the founders with a presence on the spot. So Africa is, again, a huge opportunity for us, but it needs to be thought through well as an angel investor. There are so many things that are great about Africa, as many that are, important to be careful about. So we talked a lot about also the practicalities of making investments, the syndicates to use, the vehicles, where to incorporate them. So the discussion got also a little bit more technical, but in short summary, only start investing in Africa if you can rely on people you know and you can trust with a presence on the ground, as it's crucial, really, to mentor, to take care of the companies, to monitor their progress, to recover also your investment when there will be an exit.
So if you guys are discussing on investing in Africa, okay, would that mean that the challenges in order to co-invest or to carry on cross-border deals in Europe are over?
Great question. I wish they were. No, they're not. Unfortunately, they're not over at all. But angels are entrepreneurs at heart, so they find ways around problems. This is, I guess, the latest development of these past years. It's always been a struggle for business angels to do cross-border and to set up the right kind of syndication structures that are tax transparent for non-residents of that country and easy and light enough, financially speaking, also to set up. So there has been a proliferation of we call them SPVs as a service, or syndication providers as a service. At EBAN, we have about a handful of our members that are dedicated to just delivering syndication vehicles and syndication structures for club deals, which bypass the problem and basically push a lot of the hard work and heavy lifting from the angels to a provider for the service. So that is a way to get around it. However, a big part of our summit was also about discussing the problematic EU regulations that affect angels when they want to set up fund structures and vehicles to invest, which include prohibitive licensing costs to fundraise from people outside of your home country, to get exemptions to fundraise. It becomes incredibly difficult for angels to sustain cross-border activities without having vehicles to use, but at the same time, such vehicles to use are extremely costly to set up, and they can also get you into big trouble if there's any doubt that you're soliciting investment from the broader public. So we as angels often need to act with these unregulated structures because the regulated ones, simply the math doesn't work for our community to set up. This is why we believe that these solutions, the syndication providers solutions, are an excellent kind of next step in a development that is much welcomed and needed in our ecosystem. But the policymakers, I think, can do something about giving angel investors a slightly different treatment as opposed to venture capital investors. Let us please remember that business angels invest their own money in the startups. They are not managing other people's money in a fund. So there is a very different kind of mandate here on the investments, and regulating angels and the vehicles, the legal entity structures that they set up to make their investments at the same level as a venture capital investor who's investing other people's funds doesn't make any sense. And I can only encourage governments to start following models, for example, like in the United States, where angels that set up funds below a certain size means below 25 million euros, can ask for exemptions, exemptions to be treated as a fund, and therefore they can pool more friends as angel investors in their fund structures without falling into solicitation crimes. And this is something that, of course, requires preparatory work in the legislation. First of all, we need to talk about angel investors and not just the retail investors. We need to treat this category of investors as a professional investor, as a knowledgeable professional investor that understands the risk they're taking and is comfortable with risking their own money into a very high risk asset class, which is startup investing. We need to first acknowledge that this individual And these individuals are different, but they're not the same as venture capital investor. And when our policymakers will be able to make this transition, then in the legislation, we can hopefully also start talking about exemptions and different kind of treatments for such investor groups. But I would definitely welcome, the governments to start following this kind of a mindset, because believe it or not, in Europe, there are affiliated to angel networks just about 40,000 people. Okay, to be an angel investor, there isn't really a hard kind of list of qualifications, but you need to have a little bit of capital, but you don't need to be a multimillionaire. You need to be sufficiently wealthy to be able to risk 10% of your wealth and not be affected by it from a standard of living. And you need to have some level of value add that you can bring to the company, meaning if you were an entrepreneur in the past, or if you built up a good corporate career and you built up this knowledge and these market connections, this should be enough to qualify as a business angel. And we believe that in Europe, there are hundreds of thousands of business angels, not tens of thousands. And every investment that an angel makes in a startup is creating jobs, is creating growth. And governments then can benefit from that growth and new tax money they're able to connect from new employees and from new businesses that get started. So investing in changing the legislation and encouraging more people to become investors by providing them to some degree incentives to take more risk is one of the best investments that a government can do. And if you need any proof of that, I think you can look at the UK, a country that has been introducing angel investing legislation and private investment legislation since the 80s. And of course, there's a mix of reasons why they're the most successful startup ecosystem in Europe, but that's definitely one of the reasons they are right there.
Mm-hmm. And Jacopo, where you were talking, I was thinking about the challenges of networks. Okay, I don't know if you have discussed also challenges that business angels network related to business angels also, because here in Catalonia, one of the challenges maybe is awareness. Okay, this is something that we gotta keep on working. We've been working with that since 2001, 2004. Okay, the first Business Angels Academy and the first interactions that we had with Business Angels Network, but also digitization. Digitization is one of the challenges. You guys have any views on that?
Absolutely. So business angel communities perform in varied manner. There are very vibrant angel networks that are able to quickly curate qualified startup proposals, bring them to the attention of their community, and help their members come together and syndicate an investment. There are networks that work this way because they're also leveraging software to source, to curate, to share deal flow, to help their members syndicate. Maybe they're using also syndication and pooling structures to help accelerate the deals that get done. These are all great characteristics in a 2023 angel network that is doing things properly. However, there are also many angel networks that are more simply associations where individuals network, come together, they exchange connections, they get to know each other, and investment activity in such networks that are more informal, much less structured, of course, suffers. It's more difficult to animate your community year after year and make it constantly resilient and investing actively. There are, of course, exceptions to this rule, but generally speaking, a network in 2023 needs to be equipped, on one hand, with great staff that knows how to find good deals, how to qualify a good deal, and how to help their members come together. Great people working in the networks, helped out by useful tech that can make processes leaner, more efficient, information flowing more effectively between the network and its members. And this will translate in more deals getting done. But there is a huge risk that a lot of communities, they have lots of people in numbers, very few people that are knowledgeable investors that are actively pushing and doing the deals, many people that are more interested in being a passive investor and just following on with a small ticket, and no kind of facilitation or not enough facilitation from the networks to get the deals to actually happen. And this is a big risk. And of course, as at EBAN, what we're trying to do in this space is to educate networks. So we've started since already several years. We call it the BAN manager community, the Business Angel Network Manager community, which helps people that run angel networks find answers to each other's needs and problems, and also follow and to some extent replicate each other's programs and initiatives. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel. There's many great things that are getting done all across Europe, and us at EBAN, we try to facilitate this sharing of knowledge. And then we're trying to provide networks the tools they need to be a 2023 business angel community. So we're giving them access to deal flow platforms, to platforms they can use to collect applications, to quickly assess them, to screen them, and to pass them on. And then, like I was mentioning earlier, we're creating a community of syndication providers, SPV as a service providers, which is intended to help our members go beyond the traditional syndication structures, which again, in many countries require you to go to a notary to get all the angels in your syndicate there on that day to sign. This is something that holds deals back. And startups nowadays, the best ones, they don't wait for you. Okay. The best ones, they go and they take the best investors' capital. We believe that many seed stage companies are well off with having angels in their syndicates, but at the same time, the angels, they can't take 3-4 months to do a deal. Nowadays, these investments need to happen on a much quicker time schedule than they used to happen maybe a decade or so ago.
Because technology also allows us to do it, so that would be.
It allows us to do it, and you as an entrepreneur, that fundraising is only a part of your struggle. Ideally, you're not going to be fundraising, 24/7 as a core founder of your team. Sure, when your company is going to be in Series B and C stages, you will have plenty of other people in the company that are helping you with investor relations and finding your next big VC. This is fine. But when we're talking about a team that has a handful of people and it has no revenue yet, and it's fundraising, time is a factor. Your opportunity to go to market is also a window that you never really know how far it's going to stay open for you. And you want to get that capital to work. And so as a startup, that's your expectation. You have VCs around that in seed stage, they make investment decisions in a week. You're competing against that now as a business angel community, and you need to be showing the value add that you can bring to the startup, but at the same time not take ages to invest. So that's why as a community we need to ramp up our speed, and we need to get, without compromising our quality on how we invest, but we need to ramp up seriously how we as a community do these deals.
Okay, and we have been talking as a community, okay? And basically in congresses, people unveil new data. In the case of this congress, I assume that you have also unveiled new data on the business angel market. So can you share with us
of course
some of the data that you
Of course. So every year EBAN publishes the statistics compendium, which is the publication we started in 2001 when our association was just beginning. And what we do the report using our community statistics that we gather from the EBAN members, as well as from third parties that are producing reports on angel investing in their local country. And then finally, we integrate the data using dealroom.co, which is a European data platform that tracks deal activities done across all of Europe. So the report covers 38 countries around Europe. So it's all of the EU plus other countries that are in the neighborhood in the European continent. And angel investment, we measured it for the year 2022. So last year, angels are investing roughly 1.4 billion euros every year. In last year, they invested 1.4 billion euros in the startups across Europe. So there were around 5,700 deals recorded that we've been able to monitor and to track that happened across all of Europe. This is in terms of overall activity, investments done, this is a drop compared to 2021. 2021 was indeed probably one of the most exceptional years we've ever recorded. 2022 is slightly lower than 2021, and we are starting to see this trend continue into 2023. So especially in the third and fourth quarter of last year, investments by angels started to slow down. It became a lot worse, I would say, in some countries as opposed to others. But overall, this is a market that makes up almost half of all the funding that goes to startups in a seed stage. Almost half is coming from the business angels. The other part is coming from seed venture capital investors and equity crowdfunding platforms. With the latter, the platforms also slowing down quite a lot over these past years, and with the VCs actually catching up quite a lot to the angels. Mm-hmm. The trend is pretty obvious. In order to get into good companies at a low enough valuation, VCs are increasingly moving more and more in the earlier phases of a startup's life, investing similarly to angels in the same moment, and in backing really the founders and really putting together then programs and initiatives as VCs to help the teams and to help the companies grow, again in a very similar kind of way to the business angels. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say the main things to comment on last year are the fact that we've had a little bit of a decline in the deal activity measured in euros, but we had a big increase in the investments made. Although it is a little bit early to conclude, and our report in full version is going to be coming out later this fall, we are starting to see that there are many more bridge rounds being done in 2022, as opposed to new seed investments or later stage deals done by the angels.
Is this a good
not really, or... This is not a very good number, because what happens is that in the VC community in 2022 and definitely in 2023, there was a much stronger slowdown in investment activity, meaning that a lot of startups that were hoping to raise maybe a Series A round or a bigger kind of seed stage round are now actually coming back to their original shareholders, the people that are already invested in the company, and they're saying, we need your help. And that's usually what a lot of the bridge rounds really mean. There are exceptions. There are bridge rounds that get done for other purposes, but a big reason why they get done is to have enough liquidity in the bank to keep going for another year. Mm-hmm. And that is the symptom that we're starting to see of the bigger disease, which is, more of a global VC slowdown, which was recorded at the end of last year and definitely until the first half of 2023. Fortunately, now the tide is starting to turn a little bit on that. But that's a big kind of thing that we noticed. And coupled with the fact that the average investment per company also fell by a third. So the average investment per company, which last year was around 280,000, now went down to around 220,000. Again, as a result of having, on one hand, better valuations, so lower valuations is a way to explain it, but also many, many more of these smaller bridge rounds that get done to keep the portfolios, startups, keep them going through the tough storm. Mm-hmm. And that kind of is reflected on all of the other average investment stats. So the average angel network also dropped. The average ticket put in by the typical angel also went down. Again, all of it as a result of smaller deals getting done in the community. And then if you look a little bit at the sectors, these three really haven't changed much. It's fintech leading the way. Health actually overtook enterprise software as the number 2. So that's interesting because, that's really interesting because in health, it's starting to become, I mean, it has already been the case for some years now, but it's starting to to be extremely attractive space for business angels as well to invest. Again, letting go of the misconception of maybe biotech, which requires huge road to market and lots of capital. There's tons of digital health solutions, and let's call them more like healthcare well-being related solutions. So we're not talking about like medical devices or anything super scientific, but that's a pretty interesting trend. 14% of all angel investing is done in health, broadly intended, and the remainder is enterprise. And the third is enterprise software. But what's interesting on the next slide, if you have the infographic, I'll show you a little bit that basically the sector's on the rise. So it's interesting to note that 2/3 of an increase, 67% of an increase in the energy sector. Agri-food is also strongly on the rise. Marketing is to be intended as SaaS marketing solutions, but I want to just talk about agri-food and energy as a real opportunity for angels to be also investing in. There is a lot of public grant funding supporting these innovations. As an angel, you know that a euro that you invest can walk a long way, having so much grant money and public support to such businesses. Europe and many parts of Europe are very agricultural, and our farmers are still living in the 50s or 60s when it comes from a technology perspective. And there is a real opportunity there to disrupt. And I strongly believe, and our community is in the numbers strongly investing in the green transition as something to be really highlighted and stressed. I was telling you earlier that angel investing last year took a little bit of a mixed kind of trend around Europe. We saw, as usual, has been already the case in some years, strong growth coming from the East. And we put there a few countries, but I can assure you, and there are several other examples of emerging and fastly growing ecosystems around Europe that have grown. That said, you can also see that there are some of the more established ecosystems that either stayed stable or even had an important drop in activity, like you see, for example, in France and Italy. I would guess it's also due to the fact of the VC slowdown in some of the larger hubs of investment. Angels look very closely at what the VCs are doing. Obviously, if you're an angel, you're investing because in 1 or 2 years' time, you're going to be raising another round, and maybe there's a VC getting involved in that round. Hence, when you start to see clouds on the horizon, you may have a second thought about that next new investment you're going to make. And so that becomes, in some countries, France is an example, Italy is an example that have, very focused VC community. So it's all in Paris or it's all in Milan. So when you start to see that, the tide is changing in some of those big market places in your home country, you as an angel are also a little bit more kind of playing it on the safer side and maybe postponing some deals, remembering about the companies you already backed as opposed to the new ones to be investors in. So that's a little bit kind of to give you a bit of an outline of a general comment of how the angel ecosystem has performed last year. And okay, I don't have a stat. I don't have the infographic on this slide, but if you check out on our website at eban.org, we have a whole section dedicated. We call it the Knowledge Center, dedicated to all of the reports we publish. And you can find out. You will find this report later this year. You can find the previous reports that were published there. And I would say in the past 10 years, we can say that the angel market in Europe has basically more than tripled in size. Okay, so it's today an industry that we estimate we see it as more than 1.4 billion, but we estimate it to be much larger than that because very few deals are visible in this market. So we think we're seeing just the tip of the iceberg of the angel market, only the deals that are reported, that are talked about, that are announced. And so the angel investing in overall, looking at the visible as well as the non-visible figures has about tripled over the years. So it is growing, and it is still continuing to expand. And we believe, again, there's hundreds of thousands of people that potentially could be angels, and it's our kind of responsibility as angel communities to grow and to bring in more individuals, and if possible, also with the support of governments, we can de-risk a little bit and make it more interesting to take this kind of career.
Activate, create.
That's it.
And maybe in some cases, mobilize those
Exactly.
guys that are still not in the business angels networks. Well, Jacopo, we still have some minutes, okay, like 10 minutes, 8 minutes, something like that. We have like 6 questions.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with them and with a fast pace. Okay. The first question is from Zoltan Shifra. He's asking, what's the best way to find and connect with European business angels other than attending your events?
With European angels or with the local ones close to you? Well,
I hope so. He's mentioning the
European
business angels related to your groups. And
well, what we would suggest is, if you're it depends who you are. So if you're a startup entrepreneur that's fundraising, we would recommend you to look at our EBAN membership directory, where we list all of the EBAN members. A lot of them are business angel groups. Several of them are venture capital investors. A few of them are venture builders, and there are other kind of stakeholders in the ecosystem. But the best thing to do is to start looking at the investors that are part of EBAN, and start to do, as an entrepreneur, your own assessment of who is the right match and who is the right kind of profile of investment community for you. So we profile the clubs, and then the next step to do is to start applying to those angel groups to be looked at. So if you have, for example, a good investor deck, and you can apply and send it in and maybe get selected to present, that is definitely the best way to find the investors close to you. If you're a startup entrepreneur, this is the path. If you're an investor outside of our events, the best way to connect with us is to come and find us and to have meetings with us, and to understand a bit what role you have in the community and how you can then be more engaged and a part of an angel ecosystem, maybe around you. So what we try to help people that get started to do is to start angel investing, is to start to do deals in a club, in a network where they can do these, where they can do, one, hopefully better investments because the deal flow is better, and two, also reduce the average size of their investments in the companies, therefore to build a bigger portfolio as a whole. So the best way to do that is to speak with us, and again, we can refer you to some networks that can either align with your geographic investment scope or with your sectorial investment scope.
Okay, next question from Maura. To what extent business angels have increased their investment in foreign startups? What are the benefits to do so, if there's one?
Yeah, so the benefit to invest across borders as a business angel network is that, one, there are specific companies in certain sectors, in certain industries, that may not be accessible to you in your own ecosystem. I'm thinking about, let's talk about the medtech example. So great medtech companies are usually found close to excellent centers of research and universities and similar. So there's tend to be a bit of a polarization across Europe, where medtech deals get done in a few specific places. So being a cross-border angel and building connections to local investors close to those centers of excellency is the way to access quality deals. So you do cross-border as an angel to get into quality deals that you would not be able to reach because you can't find them in your ecosystem. Secondly, some investors like to invest cross-border in specific regions of the world, example, Africa, because they offer huge growth opportunities for their startups, as opposed to markets that don't allow this kind of high growth to happen. And we see certain angels that invest in such emerging countries because of the huge growth opportunities. But coming to the core of the question, how often does that happen? Is that normal? Is that mainstream? How much did it grow over the years? Not by much. So only 10% of angel activity is done internationally. And if you look, most angel communities that do cross-border deals tend to also be found in countries that are relatively small in population and in size, which means that you do cross-border more out of necessity, but the benefits of it, when done properly, are very clear and understandable for the investors. So if that answers the question.
Well, I would add, and it's like a small data sample. But yesterday we closed the period that startups could apply at our co-investment scheme with business angels and venture capital for deep tech companies. And the majority of those companies have international investors, meaning family offices, some kind of venture capitals, but also business angels. That, you know, and it was amazing, you know, because you got deep into the contracts, and then you see those guys from all over the world and investing in current companies, deep tech. It's kind of amazing. So maybe it's a sample, maybe it's a subgroup of companies, but the internationalization of the investors, you know, table or cap table it's increasing, at least as what we're seeing.
And I think that makes a lot of sense, because again, deep tech, and it really depends how you want to define it, but if you imagine like the more conservative and hardcore definition of deep tech, meaning, you know, sciencey and coming from years of research, you know, you as an angel, you're scouting for those deals globally. I mean, the people I know that are angels in deep tech, it's not enough to be investing in the best startup they find in the local university close to them. They're going all over the world to source deals, to talk with the tech transfer offices around the world, to buy the IP or to license it, and then to do something with it. If it comes with the team, or if it doesn't, that's another kind of story. But you're sourcing your tech at a global level, because unfortunately, this is how the angel investing and VC investing is increasingly done. You're looking for the global champions, not just the local ones.
Well, maybe it makes it more interesting, you know, and enriches your own experience.
Also, yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna go. We have to go faster. Okay, answering. And next question from Gladys Calderon, Condiaron. They are a newly born startup, and she's asking what are the most important requirements that they must take into account in order to be able to receive or to present your startups to you, and the steps also to follow. What are your recommendations also?
So if you're presenting a startup to a business angel for the very first time, you should come with a decently structured investor deck. Axio and many others, I'm sure, can help give you indications on what a good looking presentation is like, but it should highlight very well a few things, and not to be forgotten, your team, you and your team, and the purpose and why you're doing this. This is so important for us as investors to know. Then to talk about the market opportunity, the problem you are solving, and what's really special and unique about what you're doing. What's your secret sauce? Those are characteristics that if you are good at making that stand out clear in your presentation, don't only go with beautiful photos. In those presentations, you need to write a little bit more than just nice looking photos. An investor will catch on to that, and you will get probably a request for a chat or for a meeting.
And how do they contact you?
Well, for us, so we open up twice a year the application process to present and pitch at our events. So we just had one last week. The next one is in Tallinn, Estonia in May 2024. So next year in May, we'll be opening up the call for the startups in spring. And if you're selected among the 25, 30 companies we usually pick, you'll be pitching on stage. So that's the way to do it. If not, EBAN membership directory on our website, you will find a long list of angel groups to be approaching with their websites. And that is how then you can figure out which are the right investors for you and how to apply to present to them.
Okay, meanwhile, they can present at the Startups to Funding. Okay,
Exactly,
that's going to
yeah,
take place
exactly.
this December here in Barcelona. Okay, another question from Harold Grails. Can companies in the audiovisual sector enter this program? How can they present?
Yeah, there's a lot of creative arts investing. And there are, I would say, spread out across networks, there are individuals that understand the dynamics of this market and understand how to create value in the creative arts. It isn't the most mainstream sector of investment, but there are angels that also back this. If I may, Belgium, the country where EBAN is based, we're based in Brussels. Belgium has a few good angel networks there, and a strong heritage and history in investing in creative arts. There's a lot of incentives for artists in Belgium as a profession. There's a lot of good fiscal incentives as well, applicable to all kinds of investing. But for some unique Belgian story, that this is a good place to be pitching your creative arts startup.
Okay, another question, Javier Lavernia, on. I have a company focusing addressing sustainability, mobility.
Yeah.
Okay, with singular charging. Would you guys have interest in that kind of a startup?
So mobility solutions are also commonly invested by angels. I would say if it's a hardware solution, as I've kind of understood, it's really important that you can show what's so special about it and how it's protected with IP, and to come to an investor well prepared also on those questions there.
Okay. Another question from Maura. We have like three more questions in 2 minutes. Okay, so
I'm gonna
have
try
to be
to
faster. Maura says it looks like VCs, as you were saying, are getting into early stage startups, especially deep tech. And for startups, it seems that it looks more appealing to have like a short or ordinated cap table.
I don't blame you. It does. Angels, however, also are starting to roll up in the cap table and become just one line. Ask your angels to do that for you, and for them it means to set up a legal entity in a vehicle. But you will definitely find a lot of value in the angels for the mentoring and the connections aspect. I don't know if the same can always be said for the VCs. Study your VCs well, though. Study them well. Some of them can really help you well.
Okay, here in Catalonia, the problem is that you cannot apply your fiscal incentive or tax shield on indirect investment, but that's something that maybe could be changed in the future. Another question from Maura. You recommend specialization or sector-focused business angels networks?
Networks, they're difficult to find. There are a few. Health is a great, if you're a health tech startup, there's a few really sophisticated networks for you, and also in some other fields like space, for example, you can come to us. Study your angels as individuals well. If you're looking for somebody that can give you connections and market expertise, have a look at their story and understand the person, the investor, and what kind of experience they've built and how is that experience relevant to you. And the way to do it, you just got to go and hang out with the person long enough to get to the bottom of that question.
Exactly. Do your own due diligence.
Do your own due diligence, exactly.
The other question is, what are your views on business angels participating in crowdfunding campaigns or platforms?
So they participate in two ways.
Pros and cons.
Well, the pros is definitely that you can get access to deals that are maybe led by business angels. So what you commonly see is that on these platforms, there are deals and there's a deal leader, which is usually like a very famous or notable angel that is probably presenting a good company that they are investing again in, or for some valid reason they're backing. So for you as a more beginner investor, following investments by such people can make sense. Again, in this space, even when you think you're good, you're still investing only 1 out of 10 times in a good startup. But anyways, you can maybe raise your chances there. For angels, we see a lot of times that when there is difficulty in closing the syndicate with your own original group of angel friends, you can place it on the platform and you can let the crowd complete the deal. So we see this as a great benefit and positive kind of next step and helps more deals get done, which is good.
Yeah. There's also a sign of someone has, analyzed the deal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's investing their own money.
Exactly.
Last question from Sylvie Lemeire. Would you elaborate on EBAN syndication advice to business angels networks? She belongs to Women Angels.
Of course.
Could you elaborate a little more? Just 1.5 minutes.
Yeah. So as business angels, you basically have country-specific jurisdictions and laws that apply that you need to know, like, the back of your hand extremely well. So my main tips and advices on syndicates on a people basis: get a good and clear understanding of who your co-investors are and where their money is coming from. Okay. Of course, everyone in this space is great, but there are some bad apples that, believe me, can make your syndicate a complete mess. So be very cautious of who you co-invest with and do it with only people you trust and know. And if they're new, hopefully they were referred by somebody you trust and know since a long time. So this is just like, before you even start and discuss doing a deal, make sure the people you co-invest with are all ethical people and they pay their taxes, and there's not going to be any problems there with the syndicate from this kind of a perspective. Then there's the technical perspective, so which I was talking about in the beginning. There's a lot of local jurisdiction that applies, including fiscal benefits that you can get or cannot get. Study this and don't do it by yourself unless you are a legal expert of your own. Get legal counsel and try to understand what are the important things to do when you set up the syndication structure that you want to use. And this is then the decision if you're going to be using it just for one-shot deal, or if this is going to be recurring structure used. The fund and legal entity setups differ, as well as how they are treated fiscally speaking. So my main advice on the technical side is, if you're doing many deals with your regular group of friends, consider setting up a structure, a legal entity that can stay and that can be used over and over and over every time you make an investment, and you're pooling every time capital on a deal-by-deal basis. That can justify the setup costs and make it worthwhile to keep for the years. If you're doing it just for one-shot deal, consider now also these syndication as a service providers. They will set up an entity, usually offshore in the country, from the country you are based, at a cost that is reasonable, not huge amounts. And they also do the hard work of the anti-money laundering and KYC on your behalf. So I guess that's as quick as I could try to put it in.
Okay,
for our friends at home.
So thank you, Jacopo. The last question from Xavi Nolla. You already answered that. You guys have a directory at our web, eban.org, so he can find there the Business Angels Networks, and also he can use the Recomanador de Finançament Alternatiu, which is an online tool that we at Acció offer. So thank you very much for your time, for sharing your thoughts and insights from the Congress, and gràcies als visionadors pel temps que heu estat amb nosaltres.
Thank you so much.